General Hospital spoilers for the week of May 26th to May 30th tease that after what felt like an endless stretch of silence, pain, and brokenness, Michael finally returns to Port Charles, not like a gentle breeze passing through the lives of those he once held dear, but like a simmering storm bearing the weight of buried secrets and unforgiven decisions. And the first to truly feel the tremors of his return is none other than Willow, his former wife, who once loved him with all her heart, who tearfully let him go, and who tried to piece her life back together with fragments of hope beside Drew, the man who had become her safe harbor during Michael's absence. But everything Willow had worked so hard to maintain, her belief that Drew was the right choice, her inner adjustments to find emotional balance, and her repeated reassurances that the past was behind her, begins to crumble the moment Michael's name resurfaces in glances, in whispers, and eventually in his actual, flesh-and-blood presence, standing before her with a gaze no longer warm, but sharp and chilling. He has not returned to beg, to apologize, or to rekindle a lost love, but with a singular purpose, to reclaim his right to father Wiley and Amelia, to restore the honor stripped from him, and more deeply, to win back the place he once held in Willow's heart. Willow is stunned not only by Michael's unexpected presence but by the power he brings, a force that begins to shatter the pretense she's built around her current life. She feels caught between two crashing waves, on one side, the man who once loved her enough to risk his life, and on the other, the man who quietly entered her world as a healing balm, yet now bears cracks she never dared to examine. Because as Michael's return awakens a flood of memories, Willow begins to suspect that Drew, the ever-gentle presence beside her, might be hiding something worse than betrayal. Whispers from behind the scenes, leaked tidbits from Carly and Tracy, and Nina's evasive glances whenever Drew is near, all come together into a dark mosaic leading to an unthinkable possibility, that Drew and Nina once had, or still have, a secret relationship. And Willow is nothing more than a placeholder. The adjustments Willow had made to live with Drew begin to feel maddening as she realizes she's built her future on shaky ground. She thought she was being loved, but perhaps she was just a replacement. She believed Drew was protecting her, but perhaps he was using her to maintain his public image while nurturing hidden ties with a woman Willow could never trust. Now, with Michael, the only one who ever truly saw her without her having to explain, returning with a mission for justice for himself and their children, Willow is forced to confront the question. Was she wrong to try to forget the past? Has she been living a false life while her heart never truly let go? Not just her emotions, but her logic, are thrown into disarray. Michael brings not just the return of a husband, but a revival of an era Willow tried to bury just to survive. He arrives ready to fight, for his children, for the truth, and maybe for her, though he never says it outright. Every glance, every word from him reminds Willow of something she never dared face, that the most intense love of her life never died. It was merely suppressed by pain, replaced by habit, and buried beneath lies she told herself about being okay. But Michael's return rekindles that memory, not to make her regret, but to force a choice. And this time, it's not a choice between Michael and Drew, but between the truth and false stability. Willow can continue living in a world where everything is neatly arranged, where she smiles beside a man hiding the most important truth from her, or she can bravely step out of her comfort zone to find herself again, even if it means facing unhealed wounds and falling for the man who once shattered her. As for Michael, he doesn't push or plead, but his presence is a clear declaration: he is ready. Now. Only Willow, the woman once standing at the crossroads of pain and hope, must decide which path to take, and whether she still has the courage to admit the truth about her heart. In a town where secrets can be weapons, truth might be the most dangerous choice, but also the only path to freedom. As for Tracy, she has never been a woman easily defeated. Now that she has uncovered the truth about Drew and Nina's affair, the smoldering fire of her anger is becoming a silent storm of destruction. Every small detail over the past weeks begins to realign in her mind like puzzle pieces never properly placed: the strange coldness from Drew, Nina's dodging glances, vague meetings with no clear purpose, and even seemingly harmless backstage gossip from the nurses' ball, all now form a horrifyingly clear picture. When Tracy confirms the truth with undeniable evidence, photos, witness statements, and personal messages, something inside her snaps. What enrages her isn't just the betrayal by two people she once respected, but the humiliation she suffered in front of all Port Charles. Arrested for ketamine possession, a trap she is certain Drew set to protect himself while masking his sins. Tracy is not the type to retreat in defeat. From the moment she was publicly humiliated on the red carpet, she began crafting a counterattack. But she is not impulsive. She waits. Because she knows the most devastating blows come not from rage, but from cold, calculated precision. Everything she's preparing targets one goal: to destroy the moral and trustworthy image Drew has built, especially in Willow's and Michael's eyes. She doesn't need to bring Drew down legally. She wants him to crumble under the weight of the very mask he wore with pride, his false integrity. And now, with the affair confirmed, and Willow's trust beginning to fracture under the weight of unresolved suspicions, Tracy knows her moment is near. This isn't just revenge to reclaim her dignity, it's a move to restore the order she believes was disrupted by outsiders like Drew, who quickly claimed spaces that rightfully belonged to others. Her target isn't just Drew as an individual, but the covert alliance forming among Drew, Nina, and even seemingly innocent figures like Portia, who's been far too eager to meddle in internal affairs. Tracy knows that if she doesn't act, the power structure in Port Charles will be flipped. And everything she built, whether by force or finesse, will be erased by a new class preaching morality while living in deception. In the coming days, Tracy won't move alone. She'll align with Carly, who's already begun to suspect Drew, and with Michael, who's preparing for a custody battle where public credibility is key. Tracy knows that if she releases the evidence at just the right time, she can destroy Drew's legal standing, expose him as an unworthy father, and obliterate Willow's remaining faith in the man she chose over Michael. If that happens, Drew won't just lose face, he'll lose everything: family, career, and reputation. This is a strike only someone like Tracy could devise and deliver without hesitation. The shifting structure of Port Charles is happening quietly but with devastating force. Seemingly stable relationships are teetering, secrets are leaking through ever-growing cracks. Drew may not see it yet, but he's entering a war he cannot win, because on the other side stands not only Tracy, but the rising voices of those who once watched silently, now ready to act. People who know that the false stability Drew and Nina built is nothing more than a bubble ready to burst. And Tracy, with all her fury, intelligence, and deep personal vendetta, will be the one to ignite it. Not with a scream, but with a whisper at the perfect moment, one that sends the two traitors plunging into the pit they dug for others. And when the new battle begins, Port Charles won't just witness a personal downfall, it will witness the collapse of a deceitful alliance built on lies and arrogance. Finally, after days of quiet investigation, persistent searching, and asking relentless questions that made those around her uneasy, Lulu has achieved the goal she had been pursuing for so long: forcing Lois to reveal the truth about Joe's real identity. This was no longer a hunch, a vague intuition, or a fleeting suspicion. It was an irreversible confirmation. Gio, the boy long seen as an outsider, turns out to be the biological son of Dante and Brooke Lynn. A secret buried for far too long, a truth distorted to protect the unspoken, has now exploded into the open, leaving behind an unavoidable shockwave. For Brooke Lynn, that moment cut deeply into her psyche and the life she was desperately trying to build. She once believed she could hide the secret forever, believed that silence was the only way to protect Gio, to preserve something pure in a world already riddled with pain. But now, all the layers of deception she so carefully constructed have crumbled in an instant. Brooke Lynn was speechless when she saw the confusion and pain in Dante's eyes. Realizing he was trying to piece together the truth from the reluctant words spilling out of Lois, but there was no saving this. No justification could ease the betrayal Dante was feeling. A part of Brooke Lynn shattered when she realized she hadn't just hidden Gio from Dante, she had robbed her son of the chance to live in his true identity, connected by blood. For Dante, this revelation wasn't just a surprise, it was an earthquake that struck the deepest core of his paternal instincts, of his identity as a man who had sacrificed so much to protect the ones he loved. He had faced countless complex investigations, seen the most horrific deceptions in his police career, but nothing had ever disoriented him like the moment he learned that Gio, the boy he once cared for deeply, was in fact his own flesh and blood, a son he never got to hold as a real father. A part of Dante wanted to explode, to demand answers, from Brooke Lynn, from Lois, from everyone who had conspired to keep this truth from him. But deep inside was a quieter, more unbearable pain, the realization that every moment spent with Gio had been overshadowed by lies. Every hug, every look built on a false premise. Lulu, the one who led the quest for truth, did not feel satisfaction in witnessing Brooke Lynn's and Dante's reactions. She felt no joy in the unraveling of secrets, no pride in having been the one to expose them. But Lulu understood, had she not acted, had the truth remained buried, Gio would have continued living a life divorced from his origins. She knew she might be seen as a troublemaker, a meddler in matters that weren't hers, but sometimes the truth must be revealed, even at the cost of shattering bonds once thought unbreakable. For Lulu, the most important thing now wasn't about who was right or wrong, it was about Joe's right to know who he truly was. And more than anything, he deserved to be loved by his real parents without having to live behind a veil of falsehood. Now, as the pieces of truth fall into place in ways no one could predict, both Brooke Lynn and Dante are forced to face a new reality. Their lives will never be the same. Joe's presence is no longer incidental. He is the living link between a complex past and an emotionally chaotic present. They now must not only ask how to make up for the lost years but how to rebuild trust, love, and parenthood in a world where truth always carries a price. Everything that was once buried has now surfaced, as a warning that nothing, especially matters of blood and heart, can be hidden forever. Jocelyn and Emma, once inseparable allies, perfect complements in a quiet alliance against the shadows of the underworld, are now poised to enter an entirely new battle. But this time, they are not allies. They are adversaries. A fracture is silently forming, not born of simple personal misunderstandings, but from deep structural changes in the power and trust they once built together. And the spark that ignited this rift did not stem from a visible conflict, but from a seemingly minor decision. Jocelyn being personally chosen by Director Dalton to be an intern in the WSB's covert training program, an honor never before given to someone her age or rank. To Jocelyn, this opportunity wasn't just a career leap, it was proof of absolute trust from Dalton, head of the covert task force. After completing previous missions with quiet excellence, becoming Dalton's personal intern was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. But this honor came at a steep cost, the price of isolation, jealous stares, and worse, the price of being pushed off the shared path that once bound her to Emma. To Emma, Dalton choosing Jocelyn wasn't just favoritism, it was betrayal. Emma, who had once shared deadly secrets with Jocelyn, who had risked her life on missions assigned as equals, now felt abandoned. She wasn't jealous of power or fame, she was hurt by broken trust. Because if Jocelyn was chosen, it meant Dalton no longer believed in her. And that feeling, of being replaced, of being forgotten, sparked a slow-burning fury in Emma, morphing her from a rational partner into a doubting individual ready to unravel the very system she helped build. Reassignments, training tiers, and team restructuring have begun to escalate tensions in unexpected layers. While Jocelyn is pulled into long, secretive training sessions, forced to cut ties with familiar allies, Emma is shoved into murky missions with no clear path, navigating shadows alone. The growing distance between them is now fertile ground for outside forces to plant suspicion, driving Emma toward a state of emotional instability. The new conflict between them, though not yet open, now shows in every glance, every veiled word. Jocelyn tries to stay calm, convincing herself she's done nothing wrong, that this is a chance she had to take, for her future, for her ideals. But deep down, she knows, if Emma ever fully turns away, not just from her, but from the entire organization, then Jocelyn's decision to accept Dalton's offer will have been the catalyst for a chaos no one can stop. Emma says nothing. But her actions have changed. She has started her own investigations, secretly tracking Jocelyn, trying to uncover the real reason Dalton chose her. In her heart, a terrifying suspicion is rising. What if Jocelyn wasn't chosen for her skills, but as a pawn in Dalton's strategy to eliminate uncontrollable agents? And if Jocelyn, the person Emma trusted most, has become an enforcer? Then the coming war won't be between good and evil. It will be between two warriors who once fought side by side, now forced to choose between reason and loyalty. Port Charles has never been a peaceful town. But as Jocelyn and Emma, once the perfect pair, begin to fracture, a new era begins. An era of battles with no retreat. An era where trust is no longer a permanent asset, but a double-edged blade, sharp enough to sever even friendships forged in blood, sweat, and promises too sacred to break. And when the battle officially begins, no one will be a bystander. Because once the names Jocelyn and Emma become enemies, the entire system will feel the quake. Willow stood at an unavoidable crossroads, as everything she had once tried to protect was collapsing layer by layer, leaving a void that could not be filled with excuses or blind faith. And in the moment when trust became the most fragile thing, she quietly heeded the advice of Sunny, the only one who seemed to remain clear-headed amid the whirlwind of hidden schemes. Sunny didn't say much, but his words were enough to awaken the wounded rationality within Willow, that it was time for her to stop deceiving herself about Drew. About a relationship built on thin disguises, and most of all, to stop trying to hold on to a reality that had never truly been hers. The evidence of Drew's crimes was gradually surfacing, not just the affair with Nina, but also more dangerous, sophisticated acts involving financial manipulation, abuse of power, and using others as tools to cover up personal wrongdoings. With every truth revealed, Willow's image of Drew became increasingly distorted. He was no longer the man who had walked through sickness with her, no longer the one who listened and shared, but a cold, calculating individual willing to sacrifice love to maintain power and influence. Willow was hurt but no longer panicked. This time, she had learned not to let emotions guide every decision. Especially when the children were being dragged into a game she once thought she controlled. And then, amid that chaos, an old light returned, strong, resilient, and no longer hidden in darkness like before. Michael. The man she once loved with all her innocence, who had shared dreams of a simple home, who had given up everything to protect her from violent storms. Now, he came back changed, no longer a weak husband, no longer a victim of conspiracies, but a true warrior ready to reclaim everything that belonged to him, including the right to be with the woman he had never stopped loving. After everything, Willow began to see Michael differently. Not just as a mother living for her children, but as a woman gradually realizing who had always stood by her, silently, unconditionally. And in that moment of realization, she understood she no longer had to fight alone. The union between her and Michael was not just an emotional reunion, but the formation of a powerful duo, a partnership grounded in love, reason, and a shared goal, to protect their children, to defend the truth, and most importantly, to take back what Drew and Nina had stolen, honor, trust, and the future. Willow started acting not on instinct, but with strategy. She sat down with Michael, not to cry, but to plan. They didn't dwell on past mistakes, no blaming, no complaints. Instead, they faced reality head-on. To regain custody, to protect their family, they had to cooperate. And this cooperation wasn't just legal, it was about image, influence, and presenting a united front publicly, one that could not be divided. Willow's transformation was not a return to her old self but a rebirth. From a woman once hurt by betrayal, she became the one proactively rebuilding her life, not relying on anyone but forging a new, solid entity with Michael, capable of facing any force threatening their lives. And when Willow donned the role of Michael's strategic partner, Port Charles wouldn't just witness a heartfelt reunion but the rise of a powerful couple, where every step, every word, every decision carried the weight to tip the seemingly unshakable balance of power. Jason had always been the silent shadow protecting those he loved. A soldier who never asked why but moved forward knowing someone needed him, especially when the price of silence was the life of a loved one. This time, he had to leave Port Charles, not to run away or leave behind unsaid emotions, but for a special mission assigned directly by those controlling a chain of classified information that could threaten the internal order of the WSB and the safety of those close to him. His departure held no promise of return, no clear schedule, and no allowance to bring anyone along, because this time, he was not just a protector but someone who had to completely eliminate a network threatening the very existence of the town he once called home. But what Jason didn't anticipate was that his leaving would coincide with a far worse undercurrent than anything he had faced, when the true identity of Sasha's unborn child's father was leaked. And the name was none other than Michael. This was not only a shock to those close to them but also a spark that could completely destroy the image Michael was trying to rebuild after his disappearance. Worse still, it placed Sasha in the crosshairs of forces eager to find weaknesses to manipulate, overthrow, and even destroy everyone connected to the Corinthos family. Sasha, who had survived countless upheavals. From the death of her first son, battles with addiction and depression, to losing nearly all public reputation, now faced an even greater challenge. Not just because she carried a small life inside her, but because the truth about the child's father was turning her into a living target for the media, hidden enemies, and even former allies of Michael who now turned away for fear of being involved in an uncontrollable scandal. Jason had always been the only one able to protect Sasha without her having to speak out. He had appeared just in time, shielding her from the world without needing to know if she was right or wrong. But now, with him gone, a huge void opened around Sasha, where any mistake, even the smallest, could ignite a fire that would consume everything. With Michael's identity exposed, unwanted questions began to arise. How would Willow react? Would the Quartermain family accept the child as part of their powerful legacy? And most importantly, could Michael protect Sasha when he himself was at the center of a custody battle with Willow and under surveillance by shadowy forces within the WSB? Sasha becoming Michael's child's mother was no longer just a private matter. It was a political piece, an emotional lever, and a spear aimed directly at Michael from everyone who wanted to prove he was unworthy of returning to the spotlight. Jason understood this clearly, which is why he left behind his final instructions, encoded, impossible to decipher without the fingerprints of both Sasha and Carly. He knew if he couldn't stay, at least he had to leave a temporary protection mechanism. But would it be enough? Sasha was lonelier than ever, not just physically but emotionally. She was caught in a whirlwind of power where no one truly came to protect her, only to watch how she would fall, how she would react, and whether she would say anything damaging to Michael. As Jason boarded the plane, his eyes never left the only photo he carried, a small picture of Sasha smiling, her hand on her belly, her gaze filled with hope and fear. He knew this trip might be the last chance to save anyone, and Sasha, the woman he never dared love openly but always kept in his heart, was now the only reason he had to survive and come back. Because if he failed, not only Sasha and the child would be threatened, but Michael, Willow, Carly, and the entire fragile balance of Port Charles could collapse completely.